So today we are going to talk about how to leverage AI to document our platform solutions, our Power Platform solutions. I will try to bring some ideas and some scenarios that we could use the documentation for, and how we could kind of use AI to help us on doing that. Because yeah, we must admit that it's pretty boring. Most of the people don't like to do documentation, and uh, usually it's tedious. Nobody updates and everything. So we can maybe use the AI to help us on making sure that we have a nice governance around the solutions that we are creating, and that we are creating nice documentation around that. Uh, just a little bit about myself. My name is August Romão. I'm from Brazil, as I said. I lived for about a year in Denmark, and I lived a little bit for a couple of months also in Germany some time ago. I'm a father of two. Actually, I have one kid already, and the next one is coming. I'm a senior architect and team lead at FellowMind Denmark. Is a company. FellowMind is a company in Europe, based in Europe. We also have some offices in Germany. So I basically work with the project and portfolio management team and also the Power Platform team there. I'm a Microsoft MVP since 2017 in two categories: Office apps and services and business applications. So my background is pretty much I started working with SharePoint, and then I moved a little bit with Dynamics and Power Platform. And I've been working with Microsoft technologies for over 16 years. And I have one book published regarding Microsoft 365. I have here also my QR code that you can uh, connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel. I have a podcast. It is in Portuguese though, but yeah, feel free to reach me out. You'll see that later on in the day we have a session from Renato. Renato is my brother. We worked together for a long time, and he's also part of this podcast that we have around Power Platform governance, career, and innovation, and things like that. So yeah, please feel free to reach me out if you have any questions, or yeah, if you want to share something. I'm always willing to share knowledge and share experiences. Just a little bit about the agenda for today. I would like to set up the scene, talk a little bit about why and what are the benefits of having documentation, and yeah, how we can kind of make these in a good way. Make the boring work fun, to show some of the ways that we could use AI to help us on making this boring work a little bit funnier, let's say, and later on a demo time. And hopefully you'll be able to see two examples of how we could use AI to help us on documenting our solutions. Just to set up the scene, basically currently, and also this is the way that Microsoft is envisioning, we are more and more seeing citizen developers developing solutions, which means that people from the business, they are starting creating their own stuff. And for pro developers, if you are a pro developer, you know that it's quite difficult to keep up the updates on the documentation. It's something that we usually don't like. And I can tell from myself that it's the type of work that we do because we need to, not because we want to. And also keeping these updates are difficult. But the most important part is that now, since we are having more people from the business creating things and developing their own stuff, then it's even more important that we need to start collaborating more. So we are creating more applications, we are creating more automations, we are creating more scripts, we are creating more solutions in general, because citizen developers and pro developers are collaborating, which means that we have tons of environments, tons of solutions, tons of pipelines, tons of different processes. And all those things, these apps, cloud flows, web resources, they are all over. And keeping a governance around that, and I think some of the other guys in these sessions and in other global platform camps, they are talking a lot about governance. How can we ensure that we have proper governance in our environments, that the IT is kind of handling everything that is there, that we have a process in place for onboarding the business people to kind of develop in a good way using guidelines and everything. So this is the scene that we have today. And if we think about it, that it's already difficult for us as pro developers to document things, even though we know how important it is for the longevity of the application, for making sure that we have a way to support it afterwards and these kind of things. Imagine for the citizen developers that they don't have this knowledge or this experience of creating something that somebody else maybe will need to give a support, or they will need to remember what they did 6 months ago in a specific line in a specific file within an app. So it's a pretty difficult one. So what does these bells on us? So this is the most important part. We are creating a lot of solutions, and this is important for us to discuss. Of course, we are empowering people to develop more, but this comes also with a responsibility of how can we ensure that these things that we are creating, they will kind of last. They will not be a burden afterwards for the company, for the organization. So that is the most important thing. If there is one thing that I would like you to remember today and to give to your team or whatever you are working on, is we need to make sure that we are creating solutions and we are governing those solutions in a good way. It doesn't have to be a fancy documentation, but it has to be something that tells a little bit about what it was done for us so we can support this. Otherwise, everything that we are creating right now, even though it's nice, it pops out on the screen, it's pretty and everything. In 6 months' time, in 1 year time, it will be a burden for the organization, or could be a burden for the organization. And I have seen this happening a lot in a lot of companies already. So this is the scene. So what would be the benefits of creating documentations and also to use whatever we have to make sure that the documentation is created? We need, as I said, we need to think and act to ensure longevity of our applications. So if we imagine, let's say I'm creating a Power Automate Cloud Flow right now, and I don't use the standards for, or the naming conventions for variables. I don't use the name conventions for the actions. I don't put a nice name for the Power Automate itself. I put it outside a solution. All those kind of minor things, if we combine them, and this is kind of the scenario that we see, it's could be a real problem afterwards. So in 6 months time, and maybe I'm saying 6 months, but it could be next week. If I'm doing a lot of things, I just did a little change on a flow just to quick fix something for the customer today, and I haven't documented at all. Maybe next week when I'm sick and someone else needs to support it because it started failing again, then it will be already a burden. So thinking about longevity, and when I say longevity, usually we think about years, but actually, when we talk about documentation and making sure that everything is in place, it could be weeks, couple of days. So documentation is pretty important. Having it in place, it will give a lot of benefit on that. Improving the governance and maturity. Governance, because then we have a way to proper document and have a process of how can we support a specific application. So if the citizen developers, they are creating and developing new solutions, they can make sure that, okay, they need to do in a proper way, they need to document in a proper way, and this is the standard for the organization. So nice that you Douglas from sales, you wanted to create an app that collects the contacts and creates the some customer relationship data management, so to speak. You can do it, no problem. You will see, you use these guidelines to create your app, and then we need to have a documentation because in 6 months' time, when you're not here anymore and someone else needs to manage this, we as IT need to ensure that we can hand it over to someone else and we know what is happening. So this is a governance thing that we can have in place. And also will bring us maturity because as we are documenting, we are also telling other people what we have done in these solutions. So what I have done in this Canvas app, what I have done in this model-driven app, what I have done in this web resource, this JavaScript that will do something on my app. This is also good for us as technical guys, even though if you are a citizen developer, to think out loud, let's say, to use a rubber duck to say, okay, I'm documenting something that I did, then it's thinking out loud what I have done, and maybe I can improve myself on that path. And another thing is that if we have a proper documentation, and I will show you that we can generate documentation, technical documentation, or just more business case documentation, but we can also improve maturity by going with these documentations to someone else. So I could maybe I'm not an expert, I'm not an architect. I wanted to improve my flows. I want to improve my scripts. Then I submit a documentation that I created to someone else that is more experienced, and then they can revise that in an easy way, and they can provide us some feedback, and then we can improve. This is kind of how we can improve also maturity within the organization. We need to ensure that we are kind of combining those things to bring more benefits to the organization and to us. And then also documenting, it will support us on the adoption and change management, because if we have a proper documentation, a proper process of taking the information within these solutions that we are creating, we make sure that IT will be onboarded, business will be onboarded, and if we have a change management team, will be onboarded as well, saying, okay, what does that solution does? Then we know about, we can generate a documentation that will tell that information to us, will summarize some information for us, and then we can use that information to say to the people that will use, this is what this flow does, this process is taking care in that way, and then if something happens here, it will send a notification, it will create a ticket somewhere. So we could document in an easy way for people to see it. In the example that I will bring today, it will be more documented, like summarizing some of the solutions that we are creating. But one of the things that I've been working on lately is to create also diagrams, because we can create diagrams based on the information that we are generating. So what if we could use AI also to generate those diagrams for us? Maybe an entity relationship diagram, maybe a flow that shows a flow chart that shows how our workflows are working, those kind of things. So we have a lot of benefits also to make sure that the adoption and usage of the things that we are developing will be better because we have these in place. So then why using AI for doing that? First thing, as I mentioned in the beginning, documenting is boring. Let's be real. This is what happens. People don't like to document. They don't like to update documents. That's why everything gets outdated. So people think about documentation only when something bad happens. If something bad happens, then they try to find out where it is written that that would be the behavior, and then they find out that the documentation is not there or is not updated or something like that. And one also important thing is that people don't often keep this documentation updated, which makes it useless. So we create a nice documentation in the beginning, then nobody updates this anymore because it was stored somewhere in a dark place that nobody knows. And then suddenly 6 months later, the application is completely different, the solution is completely different, and the documentation is useless at that time. And then everyone thinks about, okay, should we start from scratch or should we just let it like that? And at least from my experience, most of the cases they take not. So if we have all these bad things, why using AI, or how can we use AI to help us on that? AI can support us to generate in a structured way, and I would say a fun way, because we can create nice solutions. This one that I created or I built for demonstrating to you was pretty nice for me to create and to think about it. It could be silly because it's just a silly application, but it's nice to know and to see that we can do some nice stuff with quick, small things. Automate the process to generate useful documentation. This is important because then if we automate the process, let's say that you have a pipeline in place, so a deployment process of generating from development to tests to production. And then we have an automated process that generates documentation for us. Based on these versions, we can kind of try to ensure that things, bad things don't go to test, don't go to production, because we are envisioning or we are checking that beforehand. And automating the process make people to not need to do it manually every time that they need to change a small thing or something like that, will make people to work more on other productivity things. So that's why AI is so important. And ensuring that this process is triggered and executed automatically will make people happier because they don't need to do anything really. If we create a small solution that does that for them, and of course, we can use that to accelerate our process. Maybe we need to have a human revision about that because yeah, AI is not that great yet, but it can accelerate the process a lot for us. That's the most important part. So why using AI? Because it will help us to make it faster, make it funnier, make it better in a lot of different ways. Maybe I don't know how to phrase the documentation, and the AI can help me on phrasing in a good way, in an easy way for people to understand. I know the technicalities. I know how technical that solution is. I cannot say to the business how the solution is in a more non-technical way, and maybe AI can help me on that. So that's why we can use AI. And how we can do that? I brought two examples today. One example is using Azure OpenAI. The second is technically using also Azure OpenAI, but using AI Builder. So Microsoft released it a couple of weeks ago, I would say, or yeah, the AI Builder Prompt Builder, which is something that I will show to you how to use. And also I will show how to use this using Azure OpenAI from Power Automate. The most important part is that these are just examples. We could do this using scripts. We could use this. We could do this using PowerShell scripts or C# scripts or JavaScript, or we could use only Power Automate Cloud Flows to do that. We have different ways of approaching and having the same results. But today I would like to show you how to use Power Automate to generate documentation for Azure OpenAI using Azure OpenAI directly, and how to use the AI Builder Prompt Builder. So I have these two main examples. The one Canvas app with a Power Automate using and consuming an Azure OpenAI API. And the second one is a model-driven app that will consume a Power Automate and AI Builder. So I'm gonna jump into the demo to show you guys real quick. Let me switch the screens here. Just to give you a quick information about what I have done. So basically the Azure OpenAI service is a service that we have on Azure that we can leverage the GPT 3.5 and 4 already, where we can call it an API and ask a bot or ask the service to respond to us on whatever we would like to have information from. So if we provide information to the service will bring back what we are asking for. That's the main idea of this solution that I have built. And the most important part of this is that in this case, I'm generating documentation from Power Automate Cloud Flows. But we could use the same approach to document Canvas apps, to document model-driven apps, to document JavaScript web resources, plugins, whatever we have or whatever we want. One other important thing is that both using Azure OpenAI Service or the AI Builder, we are handling data within your organization. So we are not sending the data through OpenAI outside your Azure and maybe leaking data in that sense, because you are kind of sharing the data from one environment to the other. In here, we are all in the same tenant. So I'm just sending information to my Azure OpenAI service, which is inside my tenant, and in the AI Builder, the same thing. So for both, as you can see, Azure OpenAI, I'm using the Chat GPT 3.5 Turbo. And for the AI Builder, the prompt builder, they are also using the 3.5, as you can see here on the top. Be aware that the AI Builder is not available in all regions yet, so it's limited to some regions. This environment that I'm working on is in US. And I'll show you how the AI Builder works, but it's just to tell you these two examples. I'll show first the Canvas app with the Cloud Flow and the OpenAI service. So let me just switch to this tab here, if things allow me to do it. So basically what I will demonstrate first and then I'll show the details afterwards. Basically what I have in here is a Canvas app. This Canvas app is looking to environments that I have in my solution, and this is a connector that you have available for Power Platform. Then I can select which environment I want to use. This will bring me all the automations that I have within my environment. So I'm just selecting one of the automations. This is also a connector that Microsoft provides to us. Then I'm selecting which output format I want. I want maybe a markdown because I want to put these in a README file, or maybe I want these into a JSON because I would like to use these for with a web application that will parse these and show in a nice way, or maybe I want an HTML, which that's what I'm asking. I could maybe provide additional structures because basically at the end, what we are doing is we are creating a prompt to the Azure OpenAI service saying you are an AI assistant. Please do this and this and that with this information that I'm providing to you. And then the automation, the OpenAI service, they will kind of handle this information, will process it, and will bring back to us what we have asked for. So if I click generate here, and then before clicking on generate, I must tell that it is a demo, it is a live demo, so it might fail because, whenever is a demo, things start not working. But hopefully it will work for you to see it. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm calling a Power Automate Cloud Flow behind the scenes that will kind of make the prompt in a good way and a nice way, and we'll send this to the OpenAI service. And once it's kind of completed, they will turn it back the response to us. And then I'm processing here in the Canvas app, and gladly that worked. So basically, what I asked for was a simple documentation that says what it is, a brief description of that flow, what that flow does. I'll show you in a second this flow so you can see the real flow that we are using here. So brief description, this flow is a test automation that demonstrates something. The purpose, of course, as I said, this is just an example, so we could enhance this depending on the prompt that we are creating and depending on the data that we are providing. And maybe we could use this only as an accelerator, so we would need to revise and then do something about it afterwards. This is also giving me the trigger information. What is the triggers? It is a button. Maybe we need to know which flows afterwards. Maybe you need to know which flows are being triggered when something happens in a specific table. If we have this documented somewhere, it's easier for us to filter, create an application on top of that to show this kind of information, maybe create a report, these kind of things. So that's why the documentation is so important. It tells me which actions I have. I have a compose, I have a name, I have a note that it's giving me some information. If I have any input, it's telling me who created, if I had a department, when it was created, when it was modified. And I can see the raw data that it was coming from there. It is just HTML. If I ask the same thing, but in a JSON format, I could do it. And I could do some additional instructions. So I'll just try to generate JSON for you to see it. Let's see if it will work. And then I'll show in details how it is done. It's a very simple thing that, of course, we can build in a nicer way. So this is the JSON that got created. This is just AI creating for us, whatever we ask it for. To show you how this is the workflow. So this is the workflow that we used there. So I have a button trigger flow. I have the label compose test. I have some connectors, and I have some information. Basically, I just did something based on this workflow. If I go to the app itself, Teams allow me, yeah. I can show that the app itself is not doing anything more than just connecting the dots. So I have a dropdown that is taking information from a specific connector. So if I see the connectors here, I have a connector that is for Power Automate management, and I can see all the environments. I have the same thing for automations. So I'm just looking to, I think I have an event here that when I select the environment, it already brings me the automations. So I'm going to the Power Automate management, listing all the flows in the environment, getting the flows within that environment that was selected and put into a collection. And then I have a collection of all the automations that I have. Again, this is just to create a user interface for you to select what you want to generate the documentation. But it could be triggered automatically through a pipeline, and this pipeline would just get all the flows that are inside a solution, and based on that solution, it would generate a documentation for that specific solution. This is just an example. You can, from here, you can do whatever you want. I have some other parameters. And when I press the button generate, what I'm doing here is I'm calling a Power Automate Cloud Flow, sending in some information. So I have this flow called summarize flow information from Power Apps, which is basically getting this information that I have inputted in here and sending to the Power Automate Cloud Flow. In this Power Automate Cloud Flow, the most important part of these interactions with AI is set up a nice prompt. And I must admit to you that I'm not that good at it yet, but there is a lot of documentation, especially that one that I put it in the slides that I'll share with you guys later, where Microsoft is helping us on building this knowledge, building this skill of generating nice prompts. And basically what I have in here is that I'm constructing the prompt. So in this case, I'm saying to the system, to the OpenAI service, you are an AI assistant. Just give you a zoom to get better. Which role it will play. So I'm saying as a user to the system, I'll send some instructions to you, a JSON data structure regarding an automation with additional information. And then I'm parsing and I'm sending the information from the flow definition. So basically, when I'm selecting that cloud automation, cloud flow, we have a definition, which is a JSON file that tells me whatever is inside that flow. It is the same concept that we have, for instance, for the Canvas apps. But instead of JSON, there we have some XML files, which is the same thing as we have for JavaScript. But instead of being a JSON or an XML, it's a JavaScript code. But it's always code, it's always something, a text that we can send to the AI and tell them that this is a JSON, this is an XML, this is a JavaScript. We can train the AI to understand what we are saying, what we are sending it as a input parameter, and then they will bring us the information back. On top of that, on top of the data that I'm sending also some instructions. So based on the JSON provided, please summarize what this flow does as a technical documentation containing the title, brief description, and I'm saying that the response must come using that output format that I selected in the app. So JSON, Markdown, HTML. We can say maybe here in the prompt that I would like this to be a more end user documentation, or I would like this to be more technical. So I can set the tone for the AI so the AI can generate this information to me. And also the additional instructions, that field that I created in the app. So do not send any text other than the output requested. This is important. When sometimes you don't use this in the prompt, the AI sends some information back to you saying this was pre-built or this was generated by AI or something like that, and you can remove that from the text so end users don't get it. And then I'm sending the additional instructions. Basically, here I'm just setting up the prompt. I'm creating the basis or the basic information for my AI to perform an action on behalf of me. And then I'm calling the OpenAI service. Basically, the OpenAI service is something that we can go to the Azure portal. We can create this OpenAI resource, Azure OpenAI. It will give us some keys. It will give us the endpoint. It will give us the information that is necessary for us to perform this call. So basically, here I'm just calling this API and sending in the key with some information. So I'm sending the messages. Basically, I created a prompt with all the messages that I would like to share with the AI. I'm telling the temperature, tokens that I would like to use. So those kind of things are important for us to make sure that we are not consuming too much and these kind of things. Those parameters from the documentation, you can see for each one of them what the impact of sending them and also the behavior, depending on what information you provided here. But the most important one is the messages. Then once this information is back, I'm just calling an API pretty much, and then I'm receiving a response on top of that, which is a JSON structure. So I can parse whatever was sent back from the AI, and then I'm parsing back and sending this response to the Canvas app. So, and then the result is this one. So if we go to the last execution, I'll just show you. And this is to show that it wasn't fake, that thing that I showed before. So I set up the prompt here. You can see we have the prompt. We have also the JSON definition, the flow definition that I mentioned to you. And then I'm calling the API, and then I'm getting a response from it. So I'm getting the response when it was created and the content. And basically what I'm doing is just parsing the result and putting into an app. This putting to an app could be putting to a Word document, could put into a table structured in Dataverse or SharePoint or whatever, where you could use to categorize, to do something else. So again, just an example, just a use case that you could use to be inspired. So this is the first example. Having a Canvas apps, calling an API directly from Power Automate. This is important to let you know that as we are using an HTTP request, this would be a premium connector. So be aware of licenses, but also you are using OpenAI. So yeah, you might already is using a lot of different licensing models here. So the next example, it's a slightly nice one. I would say it's cooler. It's not that pretty as the other one, I would say. But the example here is having a model-driven app where we could maybe catalog our solution components. So for everything that we are building, and I know that Microsoft created an app that is a kind of solution catalog or something, we could enhance that solution catalog on top of using the solutions that I'm showing you here. And basically what I did here is just a simple table for collecting my solution components, where I'm taking the name of the Cloudflow and maybe an ID. And then I'm generating a documentation on top of that. So as you can see here, I have a documentation that says what this flow specifically does. And I have the idea of the flow. And in this example, it could be that I can have maybe a button here that I can click. I'm just using the activate, but it could be a custom button where I say generate documentation. And once I say generate documentation, it will start a Cloudflow behind the scenes that will generate that for me. So I'll just refresh here to see if the execution started. I'll again show you how it runs first, and then I will show you the result afterwards, and how I will show the results first, and then how it was done before. So it was executed 9 seconds ago, as you can see. And then if I refresh here, I can see that there will be new documentation generated. So this information in here, the most important part is that right now I'm sending some more information and I'm asking maybe if it is using connections. So it says that the flow uses shared Office 365 user connection to retrieve relevant people. It tells me which trigger is it, the summary, some actions step by step, and some additional information. So it's the same concept, but using a different type of technology. Behind the scenes, what I have is if I edit this Power Automate Cloudflow, you see that we are slightly doing something different. So instead of us creating the prompt, what we'll be using here is the AI build prompt builder. So I have this Power Automate Cloudflow that is loading. That is pretty much connected to the table that I mentioned. So whenever something happens, so in this case, whenever a status code is generating a document or something, then it gets the flow based on a specific environment and the flow ID. These could be parameters that we send through the flow, so we don't need to put it manually in here. It gets the flow definition as a JSON file, again, we get the flow definition from this connector from Microsoft, and then we are calling this new action called create text with GPT using a prompt. And then, as you can see, the first parameter is which prompt, and I'll show you in a second where this prompt is and how we can create those prompts. So Microsoft already have some prompts by standard, but this is one custom that I created. I'm sending some input, so I have whatever I want to send as a data. So this data source is generated based on the prompt. You see that we can create multiple parameters. In this case, I just created one parameter called JSON, and I'm sending this information through this connector. And the connector will give me specific information so I can get the result, the text result from the GPT. And basically what I'm doing later is just updating the row with the record. I'm just updating the record with the result, pretty much. So let's go to the funny part, the AI builder part. So if you go to the solutions, you see that we have this AI hub. The AI hub is where all the things related to AI builder are. And as you can see now, we have these AI prompts. Please be aware that, as I said, it's not available in all the regions, so maybe not available to everyone in here. But whenever I click in AI prompts, I can see that we have some prompts from Microsoft. So you can see all the prompts, and we have the prompts that I created. In this case, I just created this create text with GPT using a prompt. So it's pretty straightforward to create, and I'll just click to open mine. I have a custom name here. You can write your prompt and you can put parameters. So as you can see here, I have one parameter that is called JSON. This is the parameter that I'm sending here in the Power Automate. I have the prompts that I created. So you are an AI assistant. I have a Power Automate Cloud Flow. I need your help to summarize. I'm asking some more information about create a simple documentation to explain the business users and technical support. What is this flow about? And then I'm sending the information that is important for the prompt to, or for the AI to know what I'm talking about. And then afterwards, I'm also saying some more. So please provide a non-technical verbal language, separating content into briefing, summary, the brief summary, trigger actions, and connections, if any. Generate this content using HTML tags, highlighting titles, and using bullet lists to help user visualize better. So the nice thing about this prompt is that you can, again, put some more dynamic values. So I could put another parameter in here if I want. So you can define which parameters it will be used in here, and you can even test your prompt. So that's the nicest part. So I'll just get the last execution here to show you. Because before using it in a Power Automate Cloud Flow, we can already test it. So if I get the flow definition from the last execution, get here, I'll just copy this. This is the flow definition from my Power Automate Cloud Flow, and I'll paste it as a parameter. And then I'll say test prompt. And this will already tell me and show me how this response will look like. So this is what it looks like. You got me the HTML with H2 as the title, P, and everything. And if I change something, let's say that now I would like this content to be using Markdown. Generate this content in a Markdown format. And let's test to see if this will generate something good for us. So it created already with the titles, with the bullet lists and everything. So that is the nice part, because now I just need to save this custom prompt. And then whenever I run the workflow again, the next version or this updated version will be triggered. And that's the one that I'm using it. So that's the nice part about the AI builder, because you just need to create a prompt and then you can use this prompt directly in your Power Automate Cloud Flows. And even if you want, you could have this in a Power Apps Canvas app as well. And then, of course, you have other pre-built prompts. So as you can see, we also have a summarized text that is from Microsoft that already give you a pre-built prompt. So you could maybe use this as an example for you to start with. But it's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. And the most important part is that it helps us on generating nice stuff with just small quick wins. It's just a little slight thing that we need to put in our process to make it good. And if we trigger these automatically, so as I said, let's say that whenever a pipeline, if you have a pipeline in place, whenever you go from dev to test, you wanted these documentations to be updated, we could create an automation that whenever you approve the pipeline to move from dev to test, it goes to all the solutions that we have in that, all the components that we have within a solution, gets their specific types, so gets their flows definitions, their JavaScript files, their XML files from the Canvas apps and the model-driven apps, get the fields, get everything, and generate a documentation for us, and then maybe put it in a catalog as I did here, or maybe put it in a document file. So we do it automatically. Of course, you need to work on something to make it in a good way, in a nice way, but it's way better than creating it manually every time. So in this way, you could automatize the process and ensure that people are using it and doing it without the need of creating from scratch. Maybe they will need to review it afterwards. Maybe they will need to work a little bit more on top of it, but it's already give them a lot of gain in time, in productivity, and also maybe in language. As I said, maybe the technical guys don't like and don't want, and they are not very skilled on writing nice documentation for the business, but we could using AI, because AI, we can set the tone, we can set the prompt, and if we are good at prompting, then the results will be good, because we are sending nice data, we are sending a nice prompt, then the result must be good. So those were the two demo examples that I would like to share with you. I'll share together with my slides some more information and some more links. Um, and yeah, that's what I had to share with you guys today. If you have
Awesome.
any
Awesome,
questions.
really. So, yeah, I think we have a couple of questions.
Yes.
So, I think Ludwig would like to ask, what is the main difference between the things that you build and the app description that users get in the managed environment?
Yeah, that information in the description is a manual thing that people do. So if you mean this information that we have in here, it's something that we need to change manually. So if people, and I would say that most of the cases that I see, at least, people don't edit this information and don't put details in here. So if we use this approach, and creating a catalog is also something that we could provide to end users. So let's say that we don't want people to go into the cloud flows and see the information from here, or go to the solutions and everything. We could expose this in an application. So I think using a custom thing gives us also this flexibility on what to show, where to show, and to whom. So, and at least so far, I don't see us being able to edit this via code. But yeah, it would be also nice if we could generate automatically these descriptions. I know that Microsoft has some plans and some features for generating automatically some documentation when we are doing pipelines. But yeah, building some custom also gives us some more flexibility.
Okay, great. I hope, Ludwig, does this answer your question, or do you have anything follow up on the top of that?
Yeah, please do if you still do.
Okay, I think this is what he was probably expecting. Um, Maybe I have one thing in my mind. What kind of the precautions we need to take care about while generating the, you know, the descriptions?
When generating, you mean?
So while passing the values, or do we need to think about something from the security perspective, or from the data privacy perspective, or something like that?
Yeah, I think that's the important part, because when we are using this, if we are using the AI builder and the Azure OpenAI, then the first thing is that we are securing within our tenant. So that's I think would be the first important thing to kind of set in the scene, that we are doing within our environment. So we are not trafficking the data anywhere else. So this is the first thing. Of course, if you have the environment within, so let's say the AI builder is within your um, region, because if it's not, then you're trafficking the data outside. So in this case that I'm showing here, I'm in Brazil, but I'm using an environment that is in US. So I'm trafficking the data, my data, through US. So that is one important consideration. I think the other thing is that those connectors that we are using to fetch the data from the flow, or the scripts that we'll need to create to get the JavaScript files or to get the Canvas apps, XMLs, and those things, it will be probably created by someone that is more advanced than the business users. So this is for us to create a solution that will be used by maybe the citizen developers. Of course, citizen developers could create this, but usually they won't have access to build those things, to have access to environments, to have access to solutions, as I did. So this, I think this is the second aspect of the security that we can put in place. We will provide a service kind of for the citizen developer, saying, if you wanted to document your things, we have here the solution that we as IT created for you, and this will build the documentation for you. And from this application, this web application, maybe you can change slightly how the documentation look like, or something like that. So this would be the kind of the second layer of security that we could give. But I think that's probably the most important ones. Also, because we are not sharing, when we are sharing, for instance, the flow definitions, we are not sharing any connection information or anything. We are just sharing the structure of the flow. So it's pretty much the skeleton of what that flow does. The connectors and everything, they won't go together. So this part of the data, it's just that if we are creating a flow that it's a high classified cloud flow, that it's my idea that I created in the dark or something, that I don't want, like, I don't want these people to see what was done, then maybe it's a security thing that we need to take care. But other than that, we are not exchanging data at all. We are just exchanging the skeleton of the solution components.
Okay, that's great. And do you have any about the cost recommendation or any other recommendation while doing this activity?
Uh, I think for the AI prompt builder, it's the more risky part, because usually when Microsoft is doing those things on AI builder, we don't know how much it's going to cost in general. Some of those things are in preview. And yeah, so right now, I think the AI prompt builder is nice, but it's more for, I would say, more for POCs, demos, and internal stuff. Where in the Azure OpenAI, then we can already kind of know a little bit about how the cost will be, how the management will be around that, and those things. But I mean, it's nice to do something very quick. This is like 5 minutes to do, and we don't need to care that much about it. It's just creating the prompt. So it's really nice to have the solution. But costly wise, I think the most of the companies, I don't see they using AI Builder because of the cost right now. But Microsoft is, yeah, investing a lot on AI, so hopefully this will get better. Any Azure OpenAI, then it's a service, a cost subscription based, so it will depend on the consumption that we have there. So we can kind of create a limit or something. Especially when I created that flow that sends the number of tokens. The number of tokens is something that we can control as well. So we say, okay, you cannot send this huge flow for the documentation or something like that. So we could create some kind of tricks to handle better in the Azure OpenAI. In the AI Builder, I think is more, yeah, having the license for the AI Builder. So I think it's, if you ask me which one is nicer, I would say the AI Builder is nicer and it's easier in general. But costly wise, I think the Azure OpenAI you have more control.
Okay, that's great. And probably the last thing, like regarding the input parameters. So right now we are talking about the flow skeleton, and we are passing the JSONs against that. Suppose I have a very complex solution exist in my yeah my environment, and everything is in the same solution.xml file or some JSON file or something like that, and I need to provide this as an input to generate the document for me. Is there any limitation on the size of the document that, okay, we can only send maybe the maximum 3 MB, 5 MB of file or something like that?
Yeah, in the documentation, we don't see any information about limits, especially on
Mm-hmm.
the AI builder. But yeah, it's the same concept of the tokens. So if we send a lot of information, then it will break the tokens. So what usually
Mm-hmm.
we do when it's a big one, we split into small chunks. So we create that message that I send in the first flow that I have, instead of sending one huge thing. Where is it? Instead of sending one huge thing, this flow, instead of sending one huge thing here in the content, I break down these into smaller pieces and then say, I'm sending the first chunk of the information, expect the next, and then I send the next, the next, the next as different as separated messages. And then I say, this is now I'm finished. Please check this execution and return me the result. So we have kind of different ways of handling it. But yeah, in the documentation, there is no explicitly a limitation yet. But of course, sending something huge will break pretty much. So for at least for OpenAI, Azure OpenAI, we try to break into smaller chunks when it's something bigger.
Okay, okay, good to know. Good to know about this.
And for Yeah, and for very complex scenarios, what we usually do is that we probably won't use a Power Automate. We will use something custom developed, because then you have more ways of handling things and prepare a little bit the data to send to OpenAI, or maybe even putting the data into a storage table in Azure and then making the Azure OpenAI read from there instead of sending through an API call. So we have some other strategies that we could uh, take as an action.